The history of fresco. A mural technique painted on wet plaster. Discover the fascinating world of fresco, a technique that unites ancient masters and modern artists. In our next video, we travel from ancient Crete to the Renaissance, revealing how this enduring art has shaped the history of art. Chapter 1: Ancient Origins. Fresco, a mural painting technique revered for its durability and vibrancy, has its roots in ancient civilizations, especially the Minoan in Crete and the Roman. This art, which consists of applying water-dissolved pigments to wet plaster, allowed artists from these cultures to create works of exceptional richness and permanence. In Crete, during the Minoan period, approximately 2700 to 1450 BC, this technique was notably developed, as demonstrated by the frescoes in the Palace of Knossos. These works stand out for their dynamism and vivid colors, depicting scenes of everyday life, religious rituals, and elements of the local fauna and flora. The Romans adopted and perfected fresco, taking it to an unprecedented level of realism and complexity. The ruins of Pompeii and Herculaneum provide the most extraordinary and preserved examples of Roman frescoes. These murals decorated spaces and reflected the status and taste of their owners, often with intricate architectural designs and mythological scenes. The techniques used in these ancient frescoes were laborious and required great skill. First, a layer of oricio, a thick mixture of lime and sand, was applied to the wall. Then, the intonaco, a finer layer of plaster where painting occurred, was added. Artists had to work quickly and accurately, as the pigment had to be applied while the intonaco was still wet to ensure its adherence and durability. Ancient frescoes were not only artistic expressions but also cultural and historical testimonies. Through them, it is possible to glimpse the daily life, beliefs, and aesthetic ideals of these civilizations. Fresco, as a technique, became a fundamental pillar that would be revisited and refined in later times, marking a legacy that would endure over the centuries. Chapter 2: Resurgence in the Early Renaissance. During the early Renaissance in Italy, fresco experienced a significant resurgence, marking an era of artistic and technical renewal. This rebirth was driven by a renewed interest in the arts and cultures of classical antiquity. Artists like Giotto and Masaccio led this revitalization, standing out for their ability to rediscover and perfect the fresco techniques inherited from ancient civilizations. Giotto, active in the early 14th century, is recognized for his ability to bring figures and scenes to life with unprecedented realism and emotion. His works, like the frescoes in the Scrovegni Chapel in Padua, are exemplary for their use of color and spatial depth. Masaccio, for his part, was a key figure in the evolution of fresco during the Renaissance. His work in the Brancacci Chapel in Florence illustrates an exceptional mastery of perspective and volume, bringing an almost three-dimensional sense of realism to his figures. Masaccio's technique was revolutionary for its use of light and shadow to create more realistic and expressive forms, a technique that would deeply influence later artists. Fresco became the favored medium for large mural works of the era, both in churches and palaces. Early Renaissance artists adopted a systematic and scientific approach to their art, which included a rigorous study of human anatomy and perspective. This analytical approach allowed artists not only to replicate the techniques of the ancient masters, but also to expand and perfect them, taking fresco to new heights of expression and beauty. The revitalization of fresco during this time was not only a technical matter but also a reflection of a broader cultural shift. The Renaissance marked a period where humanism and the rediscovery of the classical past became of great importance. In this context, fresco became a vehicle to express Renaissance ideals, representing not only religious scenes but also secular, historical, and mythological themes, opening a new chapter in the history of art. Chapter 3: The Sistine Chapel and Michelangelo. The Sistine Chapel in the Vatican is the epitome of Renaissance fresco, and Michelangelo's contribution to its decoration is considered one of the greatest artistic feats in history. Begun in 1508 and completed in 1512, the Sistine Chapel ceiling, commissioned by Pope Julius II, was a Herculean task for Michelangelo. Although initially reluctant, as he considered himself more of a sculptor than a painter, Michelangelo accepted the challenge, embarking on a project that would mark a before and after in the history of art. Michelangelo's work in the Sistine Chapel broke with conventions and elevated Fresco to new heights of artistic expression. The artist painted a complex set of Old Testament scenes, including the famous creation of Adam, where the composition and interplay of bodies speak of profound knowledge of human anatomy. The most revolutionary aspect was his use of perspective and the creation of an illusionistic space in which the figures seemed to extend beyond the architectural limits of the chapel. Michelangelo faced numerous challenges during the realization of this project. Working on the ceiling entailed enormous physical effort, and the artist had to design his own scaffolding and face problems such as mold due to the fresco technique. Additionally, the immense size of the work and the variety of scenes required meticulous planning and an unprecedented artistic vision. The result was a masterpiece that transformed the fresco technique and left an indelible mark on the history of art. The Sistine Chapel is not only a testimony to Michelangelo's genius but also a symbol of the apex of the Italian Renaissance. The technical and stylistic innovations introduced in this project would influence future generations of artists, perpetuating fresco as a vital and transcendent form of art. Chapter 4. Leonardo da Vinci and Experiments with Fresco. Leonardo da Vinci, known for his insatiable curiosity and desire to innovate, also experimented with the fresco technique, leaving a distinctive mark on its history. His most famous work in this medium is The Last Supper, painted in the refectory of the convent of Santa Maria delle Grazie in Milan. However, instead of following traditional fresco techniques, Leonardo opted to experiment, resulting in both artistic achievements and conservation challenges. Leonardo attempted to combine the advantages of fresco with those of oil painting. Rather than applying pigments to wet plaster, as was customary in fresco, he used a dry technique, painting on a wall prepared with a mixture of plaster and resin. This method allowed him more working time and a broader range of effects, especially in the modulation of lights and shadows. However, this experiment had negative consequences for the durability of the work. The Last Supper began to deteriorate shortly after its completion, a problem that has challenged conservation efforts for centuries. Leonardo's experimental technique did not adhere well to the wall, and the painting suffered damage due to environmental factors and moisture. Over the years, The Last Supper has been the subject of numerous restorations, attempting to preserve what remains of Leonardo's original vision. Despite its conservation issues, The Last Supper remains a crucial masterpiece in the history of art. This work demonstrates Leonardo's technical genius and reflects his humanist approach, showing the apostles with expressions full of emotion and psychology. The innovation and experimentation in his fresco technique highlight the importance of artistic exploration, even when it entails risks, and its impact endures in the art narrative to this day. Chapter 5. Fresco in the Renaissance outside Italy. While Italy was becoming the epicenter of the Renaissance, the fresco technique began to spread throughout Europe, influencing artists in various countries. This expansion led to a fascinating blend of styles and techniques as each region adapted fresco to its traditions and aesthetics. In Germany, for example, Albrecht Dürer was a key figure in adapting fresco to the northern sensibility, applying his detailed graphic style to the monumentality of fresco. Dürer, although better known for his engravings, incorporated Italian influences from fresco into his mural works, albeit with a distinct approach. His work reflects an interest in naturalism and a detailedness that was characteristic of Northern art. Although few of his mural works survive, the techniques and styles he developed in his frescoes would influence other artists in the region, demonstrating how fresco could be adapted to reflect different artistic traditions. The fresco technique in Northern Europe often incorporated Gothic elements and an emphasis on narrative and symbolism, contrasting with the classical and humanist approach of the Italian Renaissance. This can be observed in the works of artists like Lucas Cranach the Elder, whose frescoes display a strong sense of composition and attention to detail, typical of Northern art. These regional differences enriched fresco as a medium, allowing for a diversity of expressions and themes that reflected the varied cultures of Europe. Moreover, the fresco technique was adapted to the climatic conditions and materials available in different parts of Europe. For example, in more humid areas, artists had to adjust the plaster mixtures and application methods to ensure the durability of their works. Despite these adaptations, fresco maintained its essence as a powerful medium for artistic expression, uniting artists from different regions under a common visual language that continued to evolve and adapt over time. Chapter 6: Techniques and Tools. Fresco, as an artistic technique, is notable both for its technical demands and the beauty it can achieve. Its process is a delicate balance between the chemistry of materials and the artist's skill. The first step in creating a fresco is the preparation of the wall. A thick base layer known as oricio, made of lime and sand, is applied. This layer creates a robust and porous surface that facilitates the adhesion of the following layers. On top of the oricio, the intonaco, a thin layer of plaster where the artist will effectively paint, is applied. This layer is placed just before beginning to paint and is done only in the sections that the artist expects to complete in a day, a method known as giornata. The intonaco must be smooth and uniform, providing the ideal surface for the pigment. The key to the fresco technique lies in the application of colors while the intonaco is still wet, which allows the pigments to merge with the plaster, creating a durable and vibrant color. Renaissance artists used a range of tools to create their frescoes. Brushes of different sizes and shapes were essential for applying the pigments. For achieving precise lines and fine details, smaller brushes were used, while larger brushes were used for covering extensive areas. In addition, the use of stencils and preliminary drawings, known as cartoons, was common to transfer complex designs to the wall. These drawings helped plan the overall composition and ensured that the work was executed with precision. The choice of pigments was crucial in creating a fresco. The colors had to be resistant to the alkalinity of the fresh plaster, so minerals and natural pigments with this property were selected. The range of colors available was, and therefore, limited compared to other painting techniques, but Renaissance artists demonstrated incredible mastery in using these materials, creating vibrant and expressive works that have withstood the test of time. Chapter 7: Themes and Symbols in Renaissance Frescoes. Renaissance frescoes are not only admired for their technique but also for the richness of their themes and symbolism. These works were often more than mere artistic representations. They served as vehicles to convey complex ideas, cultural values, and religious beliefs. Often, frescoes were commissioned by the church or powerful patrons, and their themes reflected both the spirituality and the socio-political context of the time. Religious scenes dominate the frescoes of the Renaissance, reflecting the centrality of the church in everyday and cultural life at the time. Stories from the Old and New Testaments came to life on the walls of churches and chapels, serving as tools for instruction and contemplation for the faithful. These narratives were often adorned with profound symbolism. For example, the colors of the garments could indicate virtues or aspects of a saint's character, while elements such as light and shadow could symbolize divine presence or the struggle between good and evil. Beyond religious narratives, Renaissance frescoes also explored mythological themes and allegories. These works reflected the Renaissance's rebirth of interest in classical antiquity and its humanist ideals. In palaces and villas, frescoes often featured scenes from Greek and Roman mythology, serving as a celebration of ancient beauty, morality, and wisdom. Through these themes, artists could explore aspects of the human experience, such as love, heroism, and tragedy, in a more universal and timeless context. Frescoes were also a reflection of daily life and the values of Renaissance society. Some incorporated representations of everyday life, nature, and cities, serving as a valuable window into the past. Through these details, not only were the aesthetic aspects of the era captured, but also changes in fashion, architecture, and social customs were documented. Altogether, Renaissance frescoes offer a rich tapestry of narratives and images that continue to fascinate and educate viewers today. Chapter 8: Decline and Rediscovery in the Modern Era. As the Renaissance came to an end and the centuries advanced, fresco, as an artistic technique, began to decline in popularity. With the advent of the Baroque and other subsequent movements, artistic preferences shifted towards other forms and techniques, such as oil painting on canvas, which offered greater versatility and possibilities for detail. Additionally, changes in architecture and interior design also played a role in this decline. The more ornate and elaborate interiors of the Baroque and Rococo lent themselves less to the large murals characteristic of fresco. However, fresco did not disappear completely and experienced a resurgence at various points in modern history. In the 18th century, the rediscovery of Pompeii and Herculaneum and their ancient frescoes inspired a renewed interest in the technique. This interest manifested itself in the neoclassical movement, which sought to revive the ideals and styles of classical antiquity. In the 19th and especially in the 20th centuries, fresco experienced another renaissance, thanks in part to the rise of muralism in countries like Mexico, where artists like Diego Rivera used this technique to express social and political themes in large public works. This rediscovery of frescoes in modern times was also driven by an interest in restoring and preserving Renaissance frescoes. Art conservation has developed as a scientific discipline, applying new methods and technologies to preserve these treasures from the past. This approach helped maintain existing works and provided a more profound understanding of the techniques and materials used, informing contemporary artists interested in this ancient form of art. Today, fresco continues to be valued both for its historical beauty and its potential in contemporary art. Modern artists, attracted by its authenticity and connection to a rich artistic tradition, continue to explore and reinvent the fresco technique. Through these explorations, fresco maintains its relevance, connecting the past with the present and demonstrating that, even in an era dominated by technology and digital media, ancient techniques still have much to offer the world of art. Chapter 9: Renaissance frescoes and their conservation. The conservation of Renaissance frescoes represents a monumental challenge in the field of art and cultural preservation. These works, created centuries ago, are constantly exposed to factors that threaten their survival, such as moisture, temperature changes, pollution, and the natural deterioration of time. Additionally, many of these frescoes are located in ancient buildings that also require care and maintenance, adding a layer of complexity to their conservation. Modern techniques for conserving frescoes combine art and science, using technological advances to understand and preserve these works. Conservators use various tools, such as microscopy and spectroscopy, to analyze the pigments and plaster materials, allowing them to better understand how the frescoes were created and how they have changed over time. These analyses can reveal details about the original techniques of the artist and provide crucial information for restoration efforts. One of the most delicate tasks in fresco conservation is cleaning the painted surface. Over time, frescoes can accumulate layers of dirt, soot, and varnishes applied in previous restorations. Cleaning must be done with extreme caution to not damage the underlying paint. Conservators often use mild chemical solutions and micro-cleaning techniques to carefully remove these layers without affecting the original work. In addition, consolidating the plaster and repairing cracks are common procedures to ensure the physical integrity of the fresco. The conservation of frescoes also involves managing the environment in which they are located. Controlling humidity, light, and temperature in the spaces where these works are displayed is crucial to preventing further deterioration. Conservators and heritage managers work to create optimal environmental conditions that help preserve these Renaissance treasures for future generations. Thus, the conservation of frescoes is not just a technical task but an ongoing mission to keep alive the legacy of the art and culture of the past. Chapter 10. Influence on contemporary art. Fresco, although an ancient technique, continues to have a profound influence on contemporary art. This technique is not only appreciated for its historical and aesthetic value, but also for the way it challenges modern artists to connect with a medium that is both restrictive and liberating. In an era where digital art and multimedia installations dominate, fresco offers a return to the tactile and the permanent, encouraging artists to explore the possibilities of a medium with inherent limitations of time and material. Contemporary artists who work with fresco often do so in a context of redefinition and exploration. While some seek to remain true to traditional techniques and styles, others opt to integrate modern approaches and contemporary themes. This fusion of the old with the new allows fresco to remain relevant, providing a bridge between the past and the present. Additionally, the fresco technique, with its demand for careful planning and execution, offers a unique artistic experience both for the creator and the viewer. The impact of fresco on contemporary art goes beyond its use as a painting technique. Its history and masterpieces continue to inspire artists of all disciplines. The visual narrative, composition, and use of color in Renaissance frescoes are often studied and emulated. Additionally, the challenge of working on a large scale and with temporal restrictions, as did the fresco masters, remains a valuable exercise in discipline and creativity for modern artists. Fresco continues to be a source of inspiration and a challenge in the contemporary art world. Although techniques and materials may have evolved, the spirit of innovation and expression that defines fresco remains. In a constantly changing world, fresco stands as a reminder of the enduring power of art to connect times, cultures, and people, offering valuable lessons for both artists and admirers of art.